What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and well, as y'all know, the Aston Martin Vulcan the Duke is now available to use after the recent summit. I would say this car is definitely one of those vehicles a lot of people definitely wanted to go after. I really do like the look of the Vulcan in general because this thing looks absolutely insane, but taking a look at the Vulcan the Duke compared to the regular Vulcan, I would say they're going to look very similar, but to be honest, I'm just really happy we're going to have another touring vehicle added into the game. And from the testing I have done with this vehicle so far, I would definitely say it's going to be pretty dang good. Now, similar to many of the other Summit vehicles in the game, guys, you really can't do much of anything to this vehicle, which I still believe to this day the only car you could actually customize from a Summit is going to be the Lamborghini Performante, so who knows, maybe in the next season we'll see something you can actually customize once again. To be honest, guys, if we're talking Lamborghinis, I would love to see the Lamborghini SVJ added, but nonetheless, though, I would say the overall detail of this Aston Martin definitely looks really good. For me personally, I would say my favorite thing about this car is probably going to be the color. I think this blue looks really good on this car, and I really do like bright colors on vehicles and or motorcycles as well, even orange for example, and then the red going around the car in the bottom here with the carbon fiber is going to look really good. Now, after taking a look at the Duke, as I did mention before, I would say the biggest change with the car is probably going to be the color setup on here. Besides that, the cars are going to look almost identical for the most part. Now, one thing I did notice though is obviously this is going to be a Summit vehicle, so at least one thing going for the Vulcan is the fact that this car is probably going to be pretty rare. It will most likely be a really long time and or this car may never make a return back into the game, so getting these Summit cars is definitely going to be worth it. Although I would say this Summit was definitely pretty intense for the most part. It had one of the highest platinum scores I've seen in the recent time as well, so I would say the Summits are probably going to get pretty intense, especially when there's cars like this coming out. But now, besides all that, let's move over to the outside look of the Aston Martin right now. So as I did mention before, my favorite thing about this vehicle is definitely going to be the color. I would say that's probably going to be the biggest thing that stands out with it, at least compared to the other one. I don't actually know if you can get this color, but then again, if you did make like a wrap or something like that, I'm sure somebody would probably end up doing that and or like a custom livery. But besides that, this car is at least going to be unique in that one aspect, and I have noticed normally the cars in the Summits tend to be really good even compared to their regular counterpart in the game as well, so if I had to guess, I would say this Aston Martin is going to do really well with handling and overall top speed. I also did notice the interior in the vehicle doesn't look too insanely customized, at least not what I have noticed anyway. Now, when driving the Aston Martin for a little bit, I can definitely tell the acceleration on this car might actually be pretty dang good, at least compared to some of the other touring vehicles in the game, because I have noticed they do struggle a little bit. I'm honestly just really happy we did get another touring car that's not going to fall into the bottom pit of the other vehicles because it's not going to do all that great. So when testing out the Aston Martin, I would say the acceleration on this car is going to be almost top tiered, at least compared to many of the other vehicles in this class. And after testing out the top speed a little bit with this vehicle, I would say it's going to be very competitive, especially against like the Renault RS01 and the Koenigsegg CCGT. This car surprised me doing around 260 miles an hour, which is almost the exact same as the two fastest cars in the touring class, but from a lot of the testing I have done with many of the touring vehicles, I would say the Aston Martin is definitely going to be better than many of them. Having that extra 9 to 10 miles an hour is going to make a big difference, especially if you guys are doing the longer races like the US Speed Tour events. So when testing out the Aston Martin a little bit, I have noticed a couple of things with this vehicle. So starting off here, as I did mention before, the overall acceleration on this car is definitely going to be pretty dang good, and I think we can all agree some of the vehicles in the crew too. Most of them obviously do have really good acceleration, so I would say it's probably more of going to come down to like the overall handling of that vehicle. Some of the things I have noticed with the Aston Martin is this car definitely gets up to speed nicely, and one of my favorite things about the touring vehicles is the fact that when you actually hit the nitrous with them, the cars feel a lot more planted and they can definitely get up to speed a lot easier. I'm honestly really happy we did get another touring vehicle, not like another street car. Don't get me wrong though, I really do like street and hypercars in the game, but I think it's cool when the other classes get a lot of love. Like for example, maybe we could get another rally raid and or maybe a new rallycross vehicle as well would be pretty awesome in the future. But for the most part, guys, I would say this touring car is definitely going to be something to look at. I'm sure a lot of players probably didn't get this vehicle because that summit was honestly pretty dang intense. I don't think we've seen a Summit like that in a while, getting a platinum score of around 1.1 million. And from driving the Aston Martin so far, I can definitely see why that platinum score was so high. This is definitely going to be a really good car to have. So for me personally, guys, I normally do run manual on most of the vehicles I drive in the game, unless it's like a 4-speed. Those cars can definitely be a little bit slower being in manual depending on how you shift them, but one of the things I have noticed about the Aston Martin Vulcan is this car really does love to be in manual. I notice when shifting this vehicle, shifting it seems to be very simple, but you can also be in the right gear very easily coming out of and going into corners as well. I found myself being in third gear very often going around corners, and the car would literally fly through the corners, and luckily shifting through the gears is also very quick as well. There's no delay like you would see in like a manual vehicle. This might also be part of the reason why I see many of the cars like the Koenigsegg CC basically falling behind just a little bit compared to something like the Renault RS01, because of that delay in shifting really does slow the car down just a little bit, which having something that can shift through gears very quickly is without a doubt going to have a lot of advantages. You can get up to speed a lot easier, you can come out of the corners quicker because you can shift faster and all that good stuff, and I was noticing that with the Vulcan. Don't get me wrong, guys, I really do like using the CCGT a lot, but after running the Vulcan now, I can definitely see how some of these cars are going to be better. I was always in third gear around many of the corners with the Vulcan. I would then shift into fourth and speed up to fifth really fast as well because of how fast this thing accelerates, because you're basically flying through the gears with no issues at all, and there's also no delay. Not only that, but you can also use your nitrous on the touring vehicles because they really don't slip all that much. So I would say the Aston Martin here is going to have a lot of positives to go with it. And not only that, guys, one of the biggest things I noticed with this vehicle as well is, my goodness, can this Vulcan handle really good. Like, I'm honestly kind of surprised how good this car goes around corners. Like, it doesn't have any stability issues either. I did notice some of the vehicles in the Crew 2 can get kind of fishtaily, or they don't even feel planted all that much either. But with the Duke here, my goodness, this car can definitely rip a track. Like, it's honestly pretty incredible. It has really no issues around sharp turns and or like any kind of turn for that matter. I was honestly really surprised because I thought the car was going to struggle a bit, and part of the reason is I really didn't like the regular Vulcan all that much, but after driving the Duke, I'm probably most likely going to go take another look at the Vulcan again, just to see what I was really missing with that car, because I'm honestly really impressed with the Duke. Like, what's also kind of funny is I was not expecting this car to be all that good because I normally do not run the touring cars all that much, but unfortunately I would say many players also do not, because there's really not a reason to run them unless a summit does come by. I think this would almost fall into the category of, can we please use other class vehicles in different races and all that. Like, for example, could I take this Aston Martin Vulcan into a hypercar race and still make the money from that? I don't know why, but I feel like that would be so much fun. And with all these different vehicles coming out, it's really going to mix up the variety and make the game a lot more fun. So again, let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. And again, from the testing I have done with this Aston Martin, I would definitely recommend giving this car a shot if you guys did get this. I'm honestly really impressed with the way this vehicle is so far, and it definitely has the potential to go against some of the better touring vehicles because it's honestly just that good.